Great. Hello, everybody. So Intersection is a company that knows how to operate slide decks, among other things. Intersection is a company that was started about 2 years ago, and our genesis came through an investment from Sidewalk Labs, which is the Alphabet company focused on building smart cities technologies. We were founded with a sort of shared vision among the folks at Alphabet and at Sidewalk and at Intersection, which is that we're at the precipice of what we refer to as the fourth revolution in urban technology. And really what we're talking about when we say that is that if you think back to the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, there have been big paradigm shifts in the way that we build cities, and you can tie those paradigm shifts to a certain extent to technological advances. The first being the steam engine, which creates railroads and factories, and I think of London as the great steam city in my imagination. If you go forward about 80 years, you get to electricity, which allows cities to pump water and have elevators and build giant tall skyscrapers, and there's lighting, so cities become 24-hour places in ways that we can't even sort of remember what it was like before electrical lighting. I think of New York as the sort of prototypical electrical city. If you go forward another 80 years or so, you have automobiles, and cities are forced to rethink land use in fundamental ways because there are 2,000-pound metal boxes zipping through the streets, mowing down innocent pedestrians and things like that. And obviously, you think of Robert Moses, you think of Detroit. I sort of view Los Angeles perhaps as the most completely automotive city. We think that we're at the dawn of this digital age, and it's an interesting perspective that 30 years into the information revolution, we'd be just at the beginning of the impact of digital technologies on cities. But the reason we think that this is happening now is that 5 or 6 technologies are coming together to create new possibilities and new ways of relating to one another. The first is ubiquitous connectivity. There are now more internet-connected devices on the planet than human beings. The second trend that we think of is social networks, which probably right below sharing cat videos in terms of the biggest benefit of social networking are these new ways that we can trust one another in big cities. So as I travel around these days, the first thing that I do is often get into a stranger's car with Uber and trust them to drive me across town. And maybe I go sleep in a stranger's bedroom, not because of Tinder, but because of Airbnb. These are really remarkable things that we trust one another in these incredible ways. You're trusting strangers effectively with your home and with your life. Sensors is another area that we think is really interesting. And we'll get into a little bit of this in a minute, but I think cameras in particular are really interesting in terms of what you can sort of train them to be aware of. And those are most impactful if you connect them to inexpensive computing and machine learning and facial recognition and things like that. Digital design and fabrication is perhaps the least mature in the West, but in China there are already builders who are printing buildings, essentially using giant concrete printers. Really interesting stuff. Blockchain, has anybody heard of blockchain? It's synonymous with Bitcoin. Just kidding. What we think is really interesting with blockchain is the possibility of creating new ways of identifying yourself in public. So a self-sovereign identity concept where you could trade authenticated credentials with people in more and more secure ways. So really, I think, hopefully, blockchain has the potential to restore the trust in connected things that seems to be eroding a little bit. What Intersection does is we help cities owners and operators make spaces more effective for people through the application of technology. On our team, we have engineers, technologists, user experience designers, software coders, sitting right alongside people who are alumni of city governments and urban planning. So it's this sort of two-speed universe where you have to understand how a city works and you have to understand the pace of change in the technology world. And to tell you how we're working and what we're doing, I thought it would be useful to talk about how we have approached our projects. And the first one is from my hometown in New York, where about 5 years ago, the Bloomberg administration was trying to figure out what to do with the payphone infrastructure, which in 1970, there were 35,000 payphones in New York City. So I think of that as peak payphone. By 2012, there were 10,000 left, still a good number. Here in the UK, British Telecom has 45,000 payphones throughout the United Kingdom. Essentially, what these are today is places to put out-of-home advertising. And for this young woman here, a place to lean while she uses her smartphone. But not a lot of people are calling them. The sort of original utility had, to a large degree, vanished. So we were challenged by the city, along with the rest of the industry, to reinvent the payphones. They put out this challenge. And I think that the reason we were successful in our effort to, quote unquote, reinvent the payphones is that rather than starting with a thought process oriented on what technology to deploy or what would fit on the street, we started with people. And we thought a lot about who the beneficiaries of a reinvented payphone infrastructure should be, and structured our thinking around what we call the 3 Cs: cities, citizens, and commerce. We went out and talked to hundreds of people that fall into these categories and tried to really understand what the most impactful sort of set of features to offer them would be. Citizens, we concluded, would benefit most from fast, free wireless internet. 30% of New Yorkers do not have broadband internet access at home, which is sort of amazing, given how important it is to student success and finding a job and sort of participating in the 21st century economy. Cities, we had to really look hard at this one. We couldn't figure it out for a long time. They want revenue. Who would have thought? I'm kidding. It's pretty obvious that that's what cities want these days, at least in America. Our commercial partners, who were the consumers of the existing out-of-home media inventory on the payphones, wanted new ways to reach people, more sort of digital ways to reach people. And so we proposed this idea that we came up with to the city, and we won this payphone franchise, which we celebrated, and we felt really excited for like one night, and then we went, oh no, we're actually gonna have to do this. It's really hard. What the heck are we gonna do? So this is kind of like before we realized how hard it was gonna be. We were really happy. There's an after picture where it's like the morning and we're all very sad and stressed out. I think the reason that we've been successful is that we never stopped engaging with the public. So we talked to our neighbors, we talked to our fellow citizens about what features they would wanna see. We put prototypes in front of them, we listened to them. Similarly, in the technology selection process for this effort to replace the payphones, we reached out far and wide to all of the vendors who might have suitable technologies, and we tried to invent as little as possible and rather sort of synthesize existing things, although in some cases we did have to make some things from scratch. We thought about the fixture itself and how it could be contextually designed to blend into the city. So here's some of my colleagues carrying a giant foam core box around the streets, trying to figure out if it fits. And we also engaged with people from all walks of life. Here's some people who are blind, and we're testing the interface for different disabilities. And we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to deliver services that are accessible to all sorts of folks on the street. Here's what we came up with. It combines fast, free gigabit wireless internet. So we're actually running fiber optic cable to each one of these units. Free phone calls through a partnership with Vonage, where you can make a phone call anywhere in North America for free using either a speakerphone or a headphone jack. There are sensors all over this thing, so we are delivering some data to the city that they can use to improve operations. There's an interactive tablet that is used for local search, wayfinding, and civic services. There is access to emergency services through a 911, or in the case of England, a 999 emergency call button, and two 55-inch digital displays on the sides that we use for advertising and messaging. And on the front, there's rapid USB charging. Best of all, potentially, this is free to residents, visitors, workers, and to the city itself because it's paid for by the advertising on those screens. So in essence, we're bringing the capital and we're bringing the technology and we're installing it and earning our revenue back through advertising that we share with the city. So here we are launching Link. This comes after the Bloomberg administration left, and de Blasio, you can see sort of leaning his foot against our kiosk. Of course, he takes all the credit for this, which he should. It's Bill de Blasio's initiative. And we're going to scale to 7,500 of these payphones across the 5 boroughs of New York City. We have about 2,000 in place now. And recently we announced a partnership with British Telecom where we're bringing this product to London and Leeds and Glasgow and several other cities. So there's already maybe 50 of them in London or something. If you're walking around, you can see them. I would encourage you to join the Wi-Fi because it's unbelievably fast. It's a gigabit speed, so in fact your smartphone will be the bottleneck, not the device. We're also in Philadelphia and Newark in America, and we're coming to other cities. So the reason I wanted to tell this story is really how we think. It's a good sort of segue from the last panel for those that saw it. It was about user experience and how you measure user experience. What we did with Link was start with people, evolve with people, and serve people. And I think the reason that we've been successful is that it's just a very human approach to innovation. Here's some statistics about our initial deployment in London. So at the conclusion of deploying Link in New York, we thought about who else could benefit from this process and started to apply ourselves to some other space types. So cities is sort of how I'd categorize Link. We're also thinking of what we call connected communities, which are mixed-use real estate developments, airports, and retail environments. And we think that these are interesting because they're places where people mix together in shared space. And there's a commercial sort of imperative in each of these examples where the landlord wants to make a buck, they want to create a great place, and we think that technology can play a role in that. The question we've been asking our clients is, you wouldn't build physical assets without a construction master plan. Why not treat your digital assets with the same foresight and care? And so the way we've been approaching this work is to partner with the world's leading developers, airports, and cities to create what we refer to as digital master plans that are specific to each project. And typically in this digital master plan, we think about the experiences and ideas that would make a place unique, what the impact of those digital experiences could be, both from a financial return standpoint and an experiential return standpoint or an efficiency gain. And we think with our clients about how to market and message the fact that these things exist. At the same time, on the infrastructure and technology side, we're trying to assess what is in the ground today from a capability standpoint, technically, and how mature and integrated those systems are, ultimately so that we can have this North Star vision of where we want to be with experience, and then a technology procurement roadmap that sort of iteratively, in a crawl, walk, run type fashion, gets our client there. So to give you a sense of how this plays out in a project, I'll talk about some work we're doing at Hudson Yards where we're building what we refer to as a responsive community. And the title of my talk today is Responsive is Better Than or Greater Than Smart. And what we mean by that is when I think of a smart city, I think of a sort of command control model where there's a command center with some wise sort of municipal Wizard of Oz changing traffic light signals and adjusting big water valves or something. It doesn't really have much to do with creating a great place. So what we want to do is create spaces that are instrumented to sort of empathetically respond to what people need And I think it's largely a reductive experience. It's the absence of a line. It's the absence of friction passing through a security gate. It's the absence of friction paying for something at a till. Our client, Stephen Ross at Hudson Yards, had this vision before we were involved. He's been saying for years, I'm trying to make this a model for the future of the sustainable city, a total mixed-use live, work, and play environment, incorporating all the latest technology. It's really a model that the rest of the world will want to adopt. And they've gotten a lot of great earned media based on this digital vision. So what we did with Hudson Yards was that experience inventorying process that I described a moment ago. We talked to about 200 or 300 different people, ranging from prospective tenants to executives to people who had already signed on to move into the yards, to neighbors, to community members, far and wide. And we heard about 106 unique ideas. We also defined, as I mentioned in the technology sort of visioning process, what the end state architecture would need to look like in order to deliver on the experiences that were deemed high enough priority. And then we made some product recommendations for things that could just be procured off the shelf, because that is sometimes the best way to go. To give you an example of what some of these experiences are, it's things like, I want easy building entry, or I want easy navigation. They're always phrased with a sort of user story in mind. We structured our deliverables, if you will, into 6 product focus areas, things like Pass, which are building entry technologies, Find, which are wayfinding tools, Home tools to make your residents more responsive, interaction tools to allow you to connect to retailers or other people on the property, operational tools to make the place more efficient, and finally, exclusive offers for people who are either residents or office tenants. In some way, this is home for them. And then through that technology auditing process, we talked to all of the vendors, and this is just a subset of the technology providers on the yards. And we're building this integration platform. That's sort of the way that we're bringing these technologies together. The platform, as we've instantiated it, uses mostly open source technologies from companies like Clearblade and MuleSoft, running on Amazon Web Services, but it's portable to Google Cloud or Azure, anywhere that we'd want to run it. For Building 10, which is the first property open at Hudson Yards, it's about 1 million square feet office tower. We have 6,000 data points coming into this platform. It's everything from a temperature change somewhere in the building to a badge swipe in the lobby to a door alarm. It's rather broad data set that was previously sort of trapped and siloed inside of different systems. When the yards opens in about 18 months, the rest of the yards, it's about 20 million square feet behind Building 10, we'll have about 250,000 data points, we think, coming into this platform. And what we're doing with that data and that capability of having these systems integrated with one another is trying to deliver on those user experiences that were envisioned during the digital master planning process. To give you some examples, one lab that we have is around building entry, where we're taking the exact turnstiles that are in Building 10, the building management software in terms of access control and guest registration, and then we're testing different interfaces on top of it. And we're sort of just slowly testing that in the real world environment from a hospitality standpoint, from a security standpoint, and the selection of building entry technologies for the remainder of the yards will be driven by that sort of iterative humans first testing process. We have similar labs around security and operations where we're taking camera feeds from around the campus and trying to determine, for instance, how many people are waiting in line and should we dispatch more security personnel to check people in? Are people using doors that they're unauthorized to use? Things like that. With that increasing awareness of what's happening in the space in terms of people count and where the people are across the floor plates, we're feeding that into the energy management protocols for the building, where at minimum we hope to do better demand response just given real-time data about who's in the structure. But over time we're building a database that would allow us to compare things like when was the last time it was 50 degrees and sunny on a Tuesday at this time of year with roughly this many people in the building? Could we have run the building more efficiently that day? If so, how? And this will become very interesting next year when a cogeneration plant, which Related, the owner of Hudson Yards, has invested in, comes online. So there'll be a energy creation possibility on property, which will make this energy management even more sort of intricate. In the end, what we hope is that this process of digital master planning and building this technology integration platform will allow Related to deliver on this promise that it's made, that it will be a 21st century connected community. And again, I just want to come back to this idea for a moment, that this isn't about necessarily visible, glitzy screens and whiz-bang, impressive smart cities technology. It's really about creating a place that is responsive to what humans want. And they want nature, and they want oxygen, and they want light, and they don't want to do some things like wait in lines and get crazy security protocols every time they enter a building. So again, I think as the sort of construction industry or property technology industry think about how to make our places more effective for people, I think thinking about reducing friction and thinking about removing interfaces is the better way to start. It's not about adding things, it's really about reducing, I think. So that's my sort of challenge to us as an industry. To give you a sense of where else we're working, we're doing similar digital master planning processes at The Grove, which is a lifestyle retail center in Los Angeles, California, where we're building digital tools. However, the digital tools are oriented around the associates and concierges and staff who works for Caruso, the owner, not necessarily for the customer. So if you go to The Grove, you might experience a more welcoming, sort of efficient process if you're valeting your car. If you're a VIP, maybe they'll remember your name more often, but you're not gonna, again, be confronted by a screen. It's really about enabling human beings to have better relationships with one another. We're also working with Weller Development in Port Covington, which is a 280-acre development in Baltimore, Maryland. What's interesting to me about this project is it's the vision of Kevin Plank, who's the founder of Under Armour, the sportswear brand. So you can see this rendering shows a campus for Under Armour on the left side. To the north is this mixed-use district, which is being envisioned. It's about 250 acres. This sits immediately across the highway from some of the poorest neighborhoods in America. And so our work on this project, I think, is very rewarding to me because we're trying hard to think about equity, and it's as much about free Wi-Fi for students and student success and creating jobs for people as it is about the sort of glitzy smart cities technology that you could build into a place that you build from scratch. The last one I want to touch on is Lake Nona Town Center in Orlando, Florida, which is a development immediately adjacent to Orlando Airport, where we're building interconnectivity between the airport itself and this retail-centric town center. So there's some interesting facets to that project as well. We're also working in airports, as I mentioned. This is a project that we are doing with Vantage, who is the lead on redeveloping LaGuardia Airport in New York. Thank you so much. I think I'm out of time, so no questions, but it's been lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much.